Right, we're dealing with a Mark 5 Golf TDI here. The rear brakes are making a funny scraping sound, so it's quite clear that the pads are worn right down to nothing and they've actually scored the disc. So what we're going to have to do is undo these bolts here and the same at the top, and get the caliper off, push the piston back in and fit the new brake pads. And to release those bolts, use a couple of different size spanners, 13 on the back and 15 on the front. Right, there's the two bolts out of there. Now make sure the handbrake's off, and then we're going to just give the caliper a light tap. Right, that's the caliper loose now. Just don't let it too much weight go on the hose and the handbrake cable. Just be careful about that. And then here are the two pads, which just check carefully how they go, which way round they fit, and then just remove them from the back. Now before we start pushing the piston back into place, it's a good idea to just take the top off your brake fluid reservoir, because obviously when you push the piston back in, the brake fluid's going to come back into the reservoir, and it's a good idea to open the top of it so the air can be pushed out. Okay, now the most difficult part of this job is getting this piston to go back into place. Obviously as the brake pads wear down, the piston comes further forwards because there's less meat on the brake pads, but when we want to put our fresh pads in, we've got to push this piston back into place, and it's a cow of a job. Now we've all tried it over the years using various levers, and it can be a real struggle. So I've gone nuts, and I've actually gone down the road, and for the first time ever I've actually got supposedly the piece of kit for doing that. Believe it or not, that costs £12.99 from Screwfix, and we're going to try it out now and see if we can actually get the thing to work. Right, so this is the Screwfix kit. You apparently put that in there. Now those studs fit on the notches in the caliper, in the piston. We then are going to wind the handle, but the Volkswagen has to have some pressure on the other end of this winding tool. So I'm afraid the Screwfix version, because it's meant to be adaptable, these notches on the other side of that plate are actually fouling this up when you put the back plate on. So what I'm going to have to do is grind these alternate studs off, and I believe that is going to leave me with enough space to get this plate on, which is part of the process which allows you to exert the pressure on that piston. So Screwfix almost works, but not quite. Right, so we've just actually hacksawed those studs off that side. 5-minute job. This thing is just about turning with a bit of extra leverage, using the old pipe, using the wrench here. just for the sake of filming. That's the kit in place. Whoops. Screwing that piston back in. And I think it's more or less all the way back now. Cow of a job. Right, there's the piston screwed all the way back in there. So that means there's now space for 2 new pads and the thickness of the disc. Right, what we got here is something called Copper Ease Anti-Seize Assembly Compound. Now, we're only DIYers, but just going to put a little bit of that on the shoulder there where the new pad actually sits. Bear in mind this part of the brake or the back hub is getting all the bad weather and it's getting covered in every kind of crud you can think of. So if we can do something to just help it, just a tiny smear of this stuff on that bit that is slidable, just a tiny amount. There we are. It probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit on those surfaces there. That has a tear-off thing with some kind of pasty stuff on the back. That's so that the wheels don't squeak when the brakes don't squeal when the dust and vibrations get in there. So your new pad just sits on those shoulders like that. The other one on the other side. I'll tear this off now. Well, I don't know what it does, but it says tear it off, so we've torn it off. And that one goes there like that. Double check, make sure everything's right. Let's get one of the studs back in, just to hold that in position. And so this is where we come back to our 2 spanners, and basically you just tighten those up. Right, we've got that back together, so let's just check the fluid's okay. Yeah, that's fine. So you can tighten up the brake fluid cap. Right, that's all back together. The brake disc is a bit scored from the old manky old pads. Not so badly scored that it needs replacing, in my opinion. If you took it to the car shop, they would probably tell you these all need replacing, and that's just going to add to your costs. Last thing you'd like to do is just fire up the engine to get the hydraulic pressure up. That's his handbrake on, solid. That's handbrake off. Well, thanks for watching everybody, and subscribers and new friends. We are only amateurs here, learners. We don't do this full time, and we don't do rehearsals, as some of you subscribers already know. It's fair to say, with the Volkswagen Golf, fixing the back brake pads, it's not difficult, but you only need 3 tools. But I think one crucial one is this piece of kit. You are never going to wind that piston back in with anything else. This thing, £13 from Screwfix. It's not expensive, and I certainly couldn't have done this job without it. Right, the old Volkswagen goes on a little bit longer, the 1.9 TDI. We love this car. It's got 183,000 on it now. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, you'll be able to see what else we get up to with this vehicle and some of my other mad DIY jobs. Thanks for watching everybody, and best wishes if you're fixing your own Golf.